Always glad to be talking in the worlds of horrorcraft and storytelling. Delighted to be having a second chat on this episode with author John Collins. John, thank you for forging your way through the traffic and for being in the Zoom with me.
Well, thank you for having me, Jason. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. We're talking about a short story collection on this episode, Altars in Abandoned Houses, which has just been out on June 2nd, I believe. And so we'll be talking about a little bit of craft in that way. But you have also recently been to a major literary horror event, StokerCon. So curious to hear any tells from the journey there.
Yes, StokerCon. I was there as a participant this time. First time I got to be involved in a panel. First time I got to do a reading at StokerCon. Not my first reading, but my first StokerCon reading, which is a little nerve-wracking because I think before me, I write for myself, but I think my primary audience is I want to impress my fellow writers. I think
Yes.
So, sitting there with an audience of writers and industry professionals watching that reading was a little handshaking, but it went well. It went well. From what, I had a few people in the audience that were there because we're friends, but some people I'd never met before, and they came up afterwards and said it went really well. So I was very happy for that. Um, I did a panel about the connection between heavy metal and horror, which was a lot of fun.
Fun,
And
fun,
uh,
cool.
and a lot of networking, finally getting to meet people that I chat with online or, through Instagram or social media or whatnot. And to finally put a face with the little thumbnail was finally good. And spoke to a few agents, just spoke to, I didn't really, I don't know if I'm ready for that part of my career yet, but, but they seemed receptive to me to begin with. That was great. And spoke to a couple publishers about some stuff for the future. So it was good, and we had a on top of that we had a great time. It was a lot of fun as well.
It's nice. You just had the chance to celebrate your debut novel, so wonderful to hear that you're forging those connections. And I know the agent things, that's a whole other realm of
Oh yeah,
writing and the business and all of that. That's a lot to get into, I'm sure.
yeah. We my publisher was there. He had a table in the vendors room, and we sold out of his initial stock of the collection, and ended up giving him some of my author copies, and sold a good number of those. And by and large, Uh, the stories aren't terribly long, so I mean, with a nice cup of coffee, you can get through a story no problem. And some people were coming up to me, a few people were coming up to me citing different stories in the collection, how much they enjoyed it. So it was very gratifying. It felt like it felt a little bit like my coming out party as a writer.
Cool,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, it was a great experience.
Congrats on that.
Thank you.
May there be many, many more such moments to come. And back to one of your points there before we delve into the collection a little bit. If you've not watched a horror movie like with subtitles on while listening to heavy metal, it's just it's a transcendent experience.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. It can be. I found that I found that the band Tool goes really well with Phantasm.
Yes, I can see that. I can totally see that. Absolutely.
None of it makes any
Well,
sense.
that's right. You just go along for the ride. It's about the
Absolutely.
feeling of the moment. Well, you had this collection of 12 stories, so curious to hear about how that came together, what the assembly and pairing of those was like. Anything about that side of the process that you want to talk about before we get into kind of the affordances of the short story?
Um, the collection came together because some of my earlier publishing credits were in really independent anthologies, and some of them are online magazines. There used to be a wonderful online magazine called The Siren's Call, and it was a free magazine, and they published some really good people in there. I mean, I'm happy to say that I'm one of those people because some people went on to do some really nice things. But unfortunately, it went under. It went under, and there was one or two stories I had in there. I published them three times, I believe, and two of those stories I couldn't find because the magazine, because no one's paying the. I'm not. I'm personally not 100% sure on how long something stays on the net on a website if it's not being paid for. I don't know. I really don't know what the process is. Does it just eventually go away? Because I have to imagine it just exists and takes some kind of bandwidth. I'm
Hmm.
not 100% sure, but I lost two stories, and luckily the third story that I had that I did recover. Um, I really is my favorite of the three, but I started thinking about the few other stories I had out there that were on the internet instead of in print form. And I was like, I really wanted to find homes for them. And to be honest, a couple of I wanted to find homes for them. And I started thinking about a collection a while ago. And there was a time about 2 years I just wrote without submitting to anything. I would just write, do the best I could, then just move on to the next project. I was really I was giving some writing exercises by a few friends, like, hey, try this out, try that out. So I just spent like 2 years just writing, not worrying about submitting at all. So I amassed a pretty decent number of stories that never been published. I never published them not because they weren't good. I just wasn't worried about submitting at the time. And I talked to a man named Michael Dolan who runs Winding Road Stories, and I was introduced to him by Rob Otone. I don't know if you
Hmm.
know Robert. Okay, Robert Otone
Yes,
introduced me.
great guy, great
Oh
writer.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
And me and Michael talked about doing something for a while, and I put out my novella last year, and he contacted me, and he's like, "Hey, when you're ready to do something, let me know." And I'm like, "Well, I've been thinking about putting together a collection. I think I have enough stories for it." And I gave him a word count of what I thought I'd have, and he's like, "I think that's fine." So that's how the story, six brand new stories and six reprinted stories, and off to the races we went. It was a pretty easy process again, actually, from manuscript to published. So I was very happy with that.
It's nice. I love a good long novel, extended novel. I'll be sitting with one by Ronald Moffey this summer, The Hive. I'm sure I'll be working through.
Ooh,
Yeah. But I love a good short story. Some of my favorite stories have been short stories, and that's a tradition that goes back to Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne writing some really cool Gothic stuff, Robert Louis Stevenson up to the present. So how do you go about the short story? Is there anything that you keep in mind or do a little differently? Any creative ritual that's a little different?
short stories to me are I kind of look at it like I think there's a very good connection between horror and comedy. And
Hmm.
sometimes you have the long drawn out bit, and sometimes you have the good 1-2 punch, for lack of a better term, knock knock joke. And
Yeah.
then a good to me, my personal preference for format is a novella. I I don't read as many big novels as I used to. I have the Malfi one. I do have that one, so I do plan on diving into that this summer. But I like shorter. I like the idea of one 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 sit sessions and completing the story.
Mhm.
And it really kind of I think everything I think of, I have a notebook. It's not here, but it's not available. But I have this notebook with all my ideas in. And sometimes they're a paragraph, sometimes they're a single sentence. If I really want to, I could probably stretch every one of them out into a longer piece. But some of them are
Mhm.
just so perfect. Some of them feel so perfect. The first story that opens the collection started as just a little homage to like the angry villager scenes in like Frankenstein movies.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm a sucker for Universal monsters, and especially Frankenstein and Wolfman. So I love those scenes. Like, oh, let's go to the windmill, yeah. So that was, and that actually became just such a small part of what the story became. But it was still, I think, I knew writing it. If I stretched it any longer than what it would be, it would be the joke went on too far.
Right.
So I think, you know, everything with me starts with an image. And then as I'm playing with it, and, and mapping it, I do map out my short stories. Once I decide it's a short, I do map it out. 'Cause because I like atmosphere and I like detail, but sometimes it's just too much. If you're saying how many grains of wood are on the wooden floor, how many planks, that's too much. Um, but usually that's how I figure out if it's going to be a short story. I mean, my short stories in tone, for a while, they were just pretty much kind of like hard boiled pulp fiction type, but I've changed tone. And that now I'm playing with tone a lot more. I, and short stories are perfect proving ground for that, as far as I'm concerned.
You were mentioning kind of those experiments in craft, and uh, great to have a short story on the reader side because, as you were talking, it's nice to finish those in one sitting. But then you also get to play as a writer and kind of pull in different elements.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, you have like Thomas Ligotti. I couldn't imagine reading a novel from him. But
Hmm. Hmm.
his style is perfect for a short story. On the other side, I'll read a Ray Bradbury novel. You know,
Hmm.
there some people and their style just fits certain formats so well. I mean, I was very lucky this weekend at StokerCon to see Billy Martin, Poppy Z. Bright do a reading, and
Hmm.
he took a long absence from writing, and especially a long absence from horror. And to see him read in just this jaw punching story, and it was,
Hmm.
and the jaw punch comes out of nowhere. Yeah, I mean, it's a horror convention. You know there's going to be something horrible in it, but when it happens, you're like, oh my god! And you know, Billy's one of those writers that can do it all. But I personally, I personally love his short stories, and
Yeah.
yeah, there's just some writers that just excel at it. It's actually humbling to be around them sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I've known his stuff since back in the 90s. It's been decades kind of following along. And I read one review of your book that was talking about how it's kind of like sitting down at a campfire and getting to tell sort of these ghastly stories. So you mentioned Universal monsters there. Any other themes and tones that you'd like to tease us with?
Um, the running theme and the running theme in the story. I mean, I tend to write a lot about the autumn in general. It's my favorite time of
Hmm.
year. I'm not really a big fan of summer. I don't like the extreme heat. Humidity just takes it out of me. I can deal with cold a lot better than I can deal with heat.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something about there's something about the smell of decay. There's something nostalgic to me about that season. Even though
Hmm.
I was born in January, you live on Long Island, you get all the seasons. So, it's not like I've never experienced those things, but there's something comforting about the fall. It's kind of like putting on that sweatshirt that just fits perfectly for me. And
Yeah.
yeah, of course, I'm a horror guy, Halloween, which I love. But I love it all the way. My second favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. And there's just something about being outside, especially now, as an adult, I'm a father, hopefully one day be a grandfather. But being, outside with the deep fryer doing the turkey with my friends while we're all having an old fashioned around the camp, the bonfire while that's going. There's just something comforting me about that. And I like the way the sun plays in the sky because I mean sunsets and sunrises are beautiful to begin with, but there's just something about the fall that really just says it to me. But the other theme, because there's two current themes in this, and is grief. Grief is a
Mm.
grief is a large proponent in this book, and I it wasn't completely intentional, but it's been a try, especially with the newer stuff, the new stuff, not the newer stuff. It's been a trying couple of years, and the stuff I've lost a few people that meant a lot to me, and their presence is felt in this book. And
Oh,
and not only people, but I've lost relationships. There's some people that I don't get to see anymore for various reasons, and there are times I miss them, and that comes through in this book too. But looking at all the stories, I'm like, wow, I've been feeling this way for a long time, because but it seems to be a running gag. And the one thing I kind of explore, and you don't have to lose somebody to feel grief. You can
mm,
lose you can lose a moment in time. Nostalgia in a lot of ways is just a different form of grief. When
hmm.
someone's when you hear all these like strange things, stranger things. Oh, it's nostalgic for the 80s. Yeah, well, the 80s were cool, but this can be really cool right now too if you really want to live in the moment. But I feel
Hmm.
people, I feel that's a form of grief too. So it's grief in various different forms.
You got those juxtaposed images in the title, so you've got an altar. I mean, something that's there that stands, but you also have the house that's abandoned. So keeping memory and keeping those parts, but also recognizing that things are changing.
I'm fascinated by abandoned houses. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by them. Especially if you go on the east end of the island with lots of farms that just kind of gone to seed and have the old the weathered wood collapsing in on itself.
Hmm.
That was someone's home at one point. That had a life. That was in many ways a living, breathing thing with the people that lived inside it. So you kind of wonder what happened to them. You kind of wonder what went on beyond these walls. Me and my wife have this running gag. Well, I have this running gag. My wife puts up with it. We'll go on like a little road trip, and we always hit back roads for some reason. I think they're more relaxing in some ways. And we'll see like an abandoned, like silo. I'm like, oh, something terrible's happening in there right now, and to the point where it's actually, she just laughs. But number one, that's the horror guy in me. Number two, there was something going on there at one point, and I think I like that those things have some character to the landscape. When I hear, I get sad when someone clears away a wooden lot for a new condo, new McDonald's, buy one get one free houses all over the place. It's just kind of like they have no character. You know,
Well,
my grandmother's house had character. The brand new house that it was replaced with, it doesn't. It's just so I always fall back to old Stephen King, because Stephen King used to put some real character into those dilapidated buildings. So
hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those memories, and then you want to go inside, but like a true horror story, it might collapse on you. So,
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's not advisable, and chances are there's nothing in there. But it's
mm,
just there's nothing scarier in a place you don't know than a closed door. There's nothing.
yeah.
all you're hearing is your foot. You feel your footsteps. You feel the wood give underneath you. You hear your heartbeat, and you hear nothing else behind that closed door in front of you. It's just like, I mean, the reality is nothing I can write will be more freaky than what's going on in your head behind it. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try my best to freak you out. But there's just something about it just energizes me. I mean, you can tell, I'm sure you can tell just looking at me right now. I'm getting a little like jazzed up for it.
The story ideas are flowing. The story
It
ideas.
really is. I was just thinking like, wow, that would really be a cool image.
Now, since we're talking architecture, let's talk about the arrangement of these stories. Was there any um, arrangement, any part of it that you really had to kind of think through several times just to kind of get those pairings in the right progression?
Um, I, I, s- I put too much thought in it the first when I first was putting them together. I put too much thought in it. I knew what I want. I knew what I wanted to close with, and I knew what I wanted to open with. Um, I was kind of thinking of it in terms of, and it's not. My explanation is not gonna. I'm not gonna make it make sense, but I actually was thinking of it almost as a magazine layout. I was,
Hmm.
kind of like, the first article, quote unquote, draws you in that you want to read the next one. And the last one's kind of like the editorial almost.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in between, how can these things link? I was in between, I was kind of thinking almost a little bit of a prize fighter. Do I want to go knockout after knockout and knockout? Do I want to pepper you a little bit with a couple jabs before I knock your teeth out? And there's nothing, I mean, my main goal with this was people have fun. I mean, I deal with some very serious subjects in here, but I wanted it to be fun. I wanted almost in a way like a literary version of a Tales from the Crypt comic in some way.
Hmm.
In the end, I mean, I've gotten some feedback already where, oh, this story was really scary. I get unnerved by things. I don't get scared by things. You know, I'm, I'm an adult. I pay bills. The bills are scary. But
Hmm.
um, but unnerved is the one thing I didn't try to do in this, and even you know, I didn't try to get in any way to go for the gross out. I mean, there's violence in it, and there is blood, but I wasn't trying to make anyone physically sick with what I was doing. I don't see a point in doing that to begin with. But
Hmm.
um, I wanted this to feel like this was the lost season of Tales from the Crypt from HBO, but it's just that's what I wanted. I wanted people to have fun with it. There's the story I read for Stoker. Well, the start of the story I read for Stoker. Everyone in that audience is like, I need that book because I need to know how this ends. I'm like, great, it's at the deal table. By all means. Um, it was very important for me that to make this fun because I think sometimes as horror writers, we take it so seriously that you forget that people are having fun. You want to make this big statement. You want to either really shock them and their writers are like, oh, I'm just going to be merciless to the reader. I'm like, okay. I enjoy having fun with this reason why I read like Jonathan Mayberry. His books are
Uh-huh.
just his books are just kinetic. They're just fun. And he deals with some heavy stuff, but it's just, but he deals with it in a way like you're jumping on a roller coaster ride. That's what I wanted with this. So the layout, with the exception of the first, what could be the middle piece, and it really turned out to be kind of shared the middle because it's not an even number of stories. But I wanted the first story and the last story to be those bookends. So that's
S-
how I kind of worked with it.
And it's funny you mentioned Tales from the Crypt. I've been on a big rewatch of all of those, so love that that was an inspiration. And the EC stuff, I mean, it stands up as far as like telling those compressed stories.
They I mean, they had great writers, they had great artists. They had
Hmm.
great art. If I could do my tattoo life over again, I would have gotten an EC comic book tattooed of my own.
Yeah.
They just had there was just so much fun, and even the HBO series. I mean, eventually it got muddled down and all that. But I mean, even the HBO series was for the first 5 seasons. Like, God, this is just fun. How you,
Hmm.
two
Hmm.
guys playing two guys playing cards where they're betting their fingers on each hand. How you not loving that?
Yeah. And we can, of course, close with the puns as well after a few more questions, if you'd like a few Crypt Keeper puns.
Sure, sure.
Uh, well, you've had this big career year of debut novel, short story collection, Bram Stoker reading. Is there anything from the past year that you're most excited to share? Any kind of crown jewel moment?
Um, said before that I think I write to get the for the applause of other writers. Some of the people that I really enjoy reading coming up to me and saying, "Hey, good job. I read
Yeah.
it. I enjoyed it." That meant the world to me. And the fact that people were just taking the time to hear, check out what I have to say. It
Yeah.
just, I can't imagine not being thrilled when someone says, "Hey, I read the Leeds Point Horror. I loved it." I can't imagine not enjoying that. It's such a thrill to me that people took time to actually, just step in my world you're willing to step into my world a little bit. And I've always been a storyteller. I just only started putting it really seriously, putting it to paper 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's just the fact that people want to spend time with me in a sense is just and enjoy it. It's just anytime I see like books in like bargain bins at like bargain bins and like Walmart or something, I get bummed out for them. But I'm like, I want to take them all home with me, and even if they're not stuff I like, because I know what it's like to sit behind, when everyone else is asleep. I'm down here typing away for another hour, and like, do I really
Hmm.
need to go? Do I really need 5 hours of sleep for tomorrow? Really? I could do another half hour. But it's been, and the fact that people are excited, I had people this weekend tell me that they're excited for what I do next, and it's just like, and people I look up to, people have just like, holy shit, I love your book, and you're saying that to me it just means the world to me. It really does. I wouldn't change it. I mean, of course, like everybody, I like to make a little money from it. That's fine. But the fact that people are even willing to spend that time with me is just, I could ask for more.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to the community, right? Welcome to the
Yeah,
club.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, altars in abandoned houses, certainly. Sharing that and recommending it. We've mentioned a few other authors here. Anyone else? Any other titles we should mention before we do a closing question?
The first is Robert Otone's Amityville Awakens, which comes
Hmm.
out in October. Don't let the Amityville part fool you. It's not hokey. Rob is just also like me, very nostalgic, and Amityville means something to him. He wrote a seriously kick-ass book. I I like to give him a little crap about things, but I was stunned how much I like this book. Um, he does a great job, and I think if you pick it up, you'll really enjoy it. The other thing is called Wood Feast by Meg Ripley, which comes out in November. It's a follow up. It's a follow up sequel to her book Necrology. If you haven't read Necrology, pick it up and then pick this one up. It is a fairy tale type Salem witch trial type world where magic is it's present and it's shunned, and it's a lot with the male class keeping women down, and she's so ridiculously talented. She did the cover for Altars and Abandoned Houses. She and she's so talented and just a fabulous writer. I'm looking forward to that and whatever else she does. But those two books, as far as I'm concerned, are the books of the year. And I don't say that lightly, especially saying that for Rob's book because I'll give him a full head. But yeah, I would highly recommend both of them.
Rob is also coming back to talk about that book on the show, so I've had the chance to check it out and can attest to that, and I'll check out Meg's work as well. So appreciate the recommendations.
Glad to give
In
it.
terms of yes, yes, thank you. In terms of the creative vision moving forward, any plans that you'd like to share? Anything that you'd like to mention about what you'd like to try out next? And part two is where can we find out more and support the work?
I'm currently working on my first full length novel. My first thing was technically it was a novella. This is going to be a full 75 to 80,000 words piece. I'm 10,000 words away from finishing the first draft. And I can't really go into too much of it because it's one of those stories that unfolds. It's my little onion, but it has a lot to do with has a lot to do with that male red pill mentality and how utterly ridiculous it is. But it's just a nasty book. I mean, to be quite honest, I'm looking forward to finishing and doing something more fun. Uh, to be,
Yeah,
I really, I'm already mapping out what I'm doing afterwards, and what I'm doing afterwards is basically if someone wanted to do like a book in the stylings of like Evil Dead. I'm
mm,
got more of a roller coaster ride and a lot more fun. This is a this book. This book is very serious, and who the people who have read what I have so far have. I don't know if they could say they're engaged by it. When that makes me happy. I don't know if it's going to be an enjoyable book. I mean, I might be shooting myself in the foot saying that, but I think it's gonna. This is my crack at saying something serious
mm,
it's definitely a horror book. It's not a I'm not branching off of that. I'll always be writing horror, but it's a little bit more grim than I'm used to doing. But I think it's a story that I think it's an important story for me to tell. So that's what I'm doing.
cool, cool.
And
Looking
as
forward
far as
to seeing it.
my stuff, feed the big monster, Amazon. Everything links back to Amazon. I wish Winding Road Stories, who published Altars, they have a bookstore, but it goes to Amazon. But the way it looks, it might be something different. So I would check out windingroadstories.com. And if their book link takes Amazon, then it takes Amazon. But he's talked about doing some stuff. So we'll see what happens. But you know, I'll always say this for everybody: buy from the publisher if you can. Support, or better yet, go to your independent bookstore, order it. They can
Hmm.
get it. You know, support the little guys. We all need them.
True enough. True enough. Well, John, always glad to talk with you, and I enjoy the horror keys that you're playing in,
Thank you.
all the tones and melodies that you're putting out there. So looking forward to the work that's on the way, and always glad to have you back here to chat.
I thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.